you turned on a myofascial pain problem where the muscles, it was primarily the joint, little joints in the neck are in a position where they're very uncomfortable, send a frantic message to the muscle goes into spasm, and you end up with trigger points. And it's not one, it's a series of muscles, because you never have one trigger point, because all our movements are complex. Okay, so you woke up, it was in spasm, and unfortunately, the doctors that you saw didn't examine you properly or didn't understand about trigger points. So it's taken 5 years to meet, and as you say, you learned about trigger points on the net, which is an indictment of the doctors that you've seen, because trigger points are very, very, very common. The problem with it is that the trigger points, it's been there 5 years, so the whole area has become sensitized. Not only are there muscles in spasm, the trigger point muscles, not only is your trapezius and the muscles up the back of your neck, your splenius capitis, there are a whole series of muscles here. Not only are those muscles in protective spasm, but all the nerves in that area are wound up, and the messages coming into the spinal cord are amplified. And so the whole area is super sensitive. Now, if you take an area that's super sensitive and you treat it, and the treatment is too rough, and like it's too intense, then it is very easy to then make it worse, to hype everything up. So it sounds like your trigger point therapist is using what a lot of trigger point therapists do, is that they're trying to kill the trigger by putting too much pressure onto an area where all the lights are on already. And it's like if you've got sunburn and you then do something to it, the whole area just hurts like crazy. This whole area, because it's sensitized, is almost as if it's like it's sunburned, so everything in it. So the treatments have to be amazingly very, very, very gentle. And that's what you've noticed. The first treatment gave you a clue that this was actually going to make a difference. But she'd actually pressed really hard and she'd caused a whole lot of pain. And then when she stopped, you had a little window, but then she did the same thing again. And the second time, your pain system said, this is too much. It's much better not to rely on somebody, but to actually treat your own trigger points in a very, very gentle way so that you don't hype everything up. So your system is wound up, so that anything done to it which is too much is going to make it worse. And that's what you found. How can you, if you treat your neck, how can you feel terrible pain in your leg and your other arm and so on? The reason for that is because the messages going into your brain, there are amplifiers all the way up into your brain as well. When you have chronic pain that's been 5 years, your whole pain system, which involves the nerves from your muscles into your spine, up into levels all the way up into your brain, right up into your cortex, all of this is hyped up. So to quieten this down, firstly, it's not going to happen in 2 or 3 treatments. If it did, that would be miraculous and wonderful. You know that trigger points are a big part of it, but you now need to very quietly and gently start to treat your own trigger points. And I'll just quickly go through it now. What you do is you find a trigger point. Now, your trapezius is a big trigger point and is the hardest to treat. So you feel up behind your head. You'll find a point, and if you just take the tip of your finger and put another finger over it, and you feel in the back of your head, and you run, so if the muscles are like this, if you run your fingers backwards and forward like that, across there, may feel a little band, feels like a little guitar string. And then on there, you'll find, oh, there's a point that's sore. So you find that point that's sore, you rest your head back, and so that it's supported, maybe against the wall or lying down, and you then gently feel around until you find a point that is more sore, where there's a little swelling under your finger. Once you've found that point, you press hard enough to know you're exactly on the point, and then you reduce the pressure until there is no pain. So you reduce and reduce. You're still on the trigger itself, but you're pushing just hard enough to know you're there, but not hard enough to cause pain. Your therapist can't do this. You can do it because you can feel exactly when it's right. Then you breathe and you relax and you just close your eyes and you send a message from your mind through your finger to the little trigger point, and you say to the trigger point, just relax, chill out. You don't need to protect me anymore because I don't need it. And you just go quietly and you do this for 20 or 30 seconds. Then what you do is that you start to gently increase the pressure on the spot. So you haven't moved. You can't move a millimeter. You just gently increase the pressure. And you will find, to your amazement, that as you start to push, it doesn't hurt. If you push too hard, it'll hurt, so then you back off. And what you're actually doing is you're pressing. As you start to press very gently on the trigger, you're already starting to change its sensitivity. You're putting a little bit of pressure, you're putting on the nerves that are super sensitive, and you're just saying to them, go to sleep. You're reducing a bit of blood flow into the area, and as you increase the pressure, the trigger point will quieten and quieten and quieten until it melts away. And then you've turned that trigger point off for maybe the next half an hour, maybe the next day. Okay, and what you then do is you feel around and you find other triggers and you treat them in exactly the same way. The triggers in the smaller muscles are easier to treat, and they will be more, it'll be easier. They go away quicker. The trapezius trigger, and there are two triggers, but you have to pinch the muscle. But because it's such a big trigger, you have to be super gentle. And again, in the same way, you are just sneaking up on the trigger and you're putting it to sleep. You can't kill it. You can't kill it by pressing so hard, because that will, already the area is wound up. So you start doing that, and after you've treated yourself, you put a wheat bag on and you just lie and you relax. And you do this once, twice a day, very gently, just chipping away, slowly, slowly, slowly. And you will find that your pain starts to reduce.